What's going on, guys? It's Greg here, aka NYPrepper. In this video, I'm going to do another 12 gauge shotgun penetration test, and we're going to be shooting at some plywood to see how many sheets of standard 1/2 inch 3-ply southern yellow pine plywood a 12 gauge 2 3/4 inch 1 ounce shotgun slug can penetrate through. And if you haven't seen my other 12 gauge penetration tests and ballistics tests, I recommend you check out my 12 gauge shotgun playlist, and I'll leave a link at the top of this video to that playlist. I have all of my 12 gauge shotgun videos in that playlist, and I'll also leave a link to my plywood penetration tests playlist, which has all of my plywood penetration tests in it for all different cartridges that I've tested so far. And the way I'm going to set up the plywood is I'm going to screw them all together so they're tightly compressed against each other. There's not going to be any space between the plywood sheets. They're going to be all screwed together. I've cut the plywood to 1 foot by 1 foot squares, and we're going to see how many sheets of regular plywood a regular 2 3/4 inch 12 gauge 1 ounce slug can penetrate through. And the slug I'm going to be using for this particular test is some Millie Custom Defense Ammunition's 12 gauge 2 3/4 inch 1 ounce hollow point lead slug. This is just a regular soft lead slug, and it has an advertised velocity of 1,550 feet per second for a muzzle energy of 2,330 foot-pounds. And I'm going to be shooting at the plywood from a distance of about 10 yards. I'm going to be using my Remington 870 tactical shotgun, which I've heavily customized. And the reason why I'm doing this test is to figure out how many residential walls a regular 12 gauge 1 ounce 2 3/4 inch shotgun slug can penetrate through. And if we combine the results of this test with the results of some other tests that I've done with 12 gauge slugs, it should give us a general idea of how many walls and how many houses a regular 1 ounce 12 gauge slug can penetrate through. And I've done some drywall penetration tests with shotgun slugs, as well as buckshot, birdshot, and turkey shot. And you can see those tests in my drywall penetration tests playlist. You can also see those tests in my 12 gauge playlist, and I'll leave links at the top of this video to all of those playlists. But I recommend you watch this test, and after you watch this test, go and watch my drywall penetration test. And in that test, I shot a 1 ounce 3 inch slug at some drywall, regular 1/2 inch drywall, which is what interior walls are made of in houses in the United States. I also shot some 2 3/4 inch slugs. I also shot some penetrator slugs from Brennick, and I also shot buckshot, birdshot, and turkey shot at the drywall. So if you watch that test and you watch this test, it should give you a rough idea of how many walls and how many houses a 12 gauge slug can penetrate through. And at the end of the video, I'm going to pull the slug out of the plywood. We're going to take a closer look at it to see how much weight the slug retained, if it maintained some of its shape or if it completely deformed. We're going to see how much expansion it had and what kind of a wound channel it left inside of the plywood. And I'm also going to compare the results of this test with the results of some other plywood penetration tests that I've done. And if you're interested in seeing those other tests, they're in my plywood penetration tests playlist. I've tested a variety of rifle and pistol cartridges already, so it'll be interesting to see how the classic 1 ounce, 2 3/4 inch, 12 gauge shotgun slug compares to some rifle and pistol cartridges when it comes to penetrating regular 1/2 inch 3-ply southern yellow pine plywood. So I'll leave links up above at the top of this video to my 12 gauge shotgun playlist, my plywood penetration tests playlist, and my drywall penetration tests playlist, which has all of these videos that I mentioned in them. So I hope you enjoy the video. Thanks for your support. And before I start the video, I'm just going to give a quick shout out to one of my sponsors. This video is being sponsored by Craft Holsters. If you guys are looking for a holster, check out craftholsters.com. The link is in the description below any of my videos, and they make some really beautiful holsters, magazine pouches, speed loader pouches, conceal carry bags, conceal carry purses, gun belts, anything you can imagine they make. Inside the waistband, outside the waistband, leather, nylon, kydex, anything you can imagine. They have some really innovative products. I've reviewed a few of them on my channel. They have belly bands, they have fanny packs, they have anything you can imagine, and their quality is really good. They use really nice leather, and the stitching is very high quality on their leather holsters. Their kydex holsters fit really well. And if you use the promo code NYPrepper10, you get a 10% coupon or 10% discount on any product that you order from Craft Holsters. And they make really good stuff. So check them out. Craftholsters.com, NYPrepper10 for 10% off. Alright guys, so I want to discuss the results with you now. So the Millie Custom Defense Ammunitions 2 3/4 inch 1 ounce lead slug traveling at 1,550 feet per second only penetrated through 5 sheets of regular 1/2 inch 3-ply Southern Yellow Pine plywood. That's not a lot of penetration. So if you plan to use a 12 gauge rifled lead slug for home defense, it's definitely a great choice because you don't have to worry too much about over penetrating. But if you plan to use a 1 ounce slug for something like bear defense, it's definitely a poor choice because it really doesn't penetrate well. So I want to just compare the results of this test with some other tests that I've done. So I did a 44 Magnum test, and with the 44 Magnum, I was able to penetrate through 5 sheets of plywood with the Fiocchi 240 grain soft points traveling at around 1,400 feet per second. So the 12 gauge 1 ounce slug can only penetrate 5 sheets of plywood, the same amount as a 44 Magnum 240 grain soft point. And the Hornady 225 grain 44 Magnum flex tip penetrated through 6 sheets. The Underwood Ammo 245 grain full metal jacket 44 Magnum penetrated through 11 and 12 sheets. So the 44 Magnum with full metal jackets can penetrate double what this 2 3/4 inch 1 ounce rifled lead slug can penetrate in plywood. Now the 308 Winchester can penetrate through 28 sheets. The 4570 can penetrate through 33 sheets with mono metals, and the 300 Win Mag with 180 grain solids can penetrate through 38 sheets, and the 416 Ruger with solids can penetrate through 75 sheets, and that's the deepest penetrating cartridge I've tested so far in all of my tests. Now the 308 150 grain soft point from PRVI Partisan penetrated through 14 sheets. So even a soft point 308 has nearly triple the penetration of a 12 gauge 1 ounce slug inside of regular 1/2 inch plywood. So pretty interesting results, and I wasn't surprised by these results because I've done a lot of other tests with 12 gauge slugs, and in all of the tests that I've done so far, they have proven to be very poor penetrators. I've also done a test with 2x10 lumber, and the 12 gauge 1 ounce slug could only penetrate through 1 board of 2x10 lumber. And I'll leave a link up above to the 2x10 test that I did. But in the 2x10 test, the 12 gauge 1 ounce slug only penetrated through 1 2x10, and even my 44 Magnum hollow points could penetrate through 2 2x10s. So very poor penetration with the 12 gauge 1 ounce slug, but that's what I expected, and it didn't surprise me at all. So again, if you plan to use a 12 gauge slug, just know the limitations. It's really good at stopping bad guys who are not wearing armor or who are not behind some kind of thick cover. It's not good at penetrating through deep tissue, like in a bear defense scenario where you have to penetrate through several inches of fat and then muscle and bone. There's no way a 1 ounce slug will penetrate deep enough to stop a brown bear. So definitely don't recommend a 1 ounce slug for bear defense, but for home defense, definitely a great option because it doesn't over penetrate. Only 5 sheets of 1/2-inch plywood, the same amount of penetration as a 44 Magnum 240 grain soft point. So pretty interesting results, guys. So I'm gonna now show you guys the plywood up close and show you guys the damage that the slug did to the plywood. And then I'm going to pull the slug out of the plywood. We're going to take a closer look at the slug. We're going to weigh it to see what kind of weight retention it had. And we're going to just take a closer look at it and see what kind of expansion occurred and how badly it got deformed. All right, guys, welcome back to the NYPrepper Top Secret Ballistics Analysis Lab in rural Pennsylvania. I want to go through all the sheets of plywood with you one by one so you can get a closer look at what exactly happened. So here is the first sheet, and you can see I had a perfect hit right in the middle, exactly where I was aiming. So no accuracy issues to report with this slug. All these holes around it are from my 308 test that I did on the same day. So you can ignore these holes. And if you're interested in seeing my 308 test, check out my 308 playlist, or you can check out my plywood penetration tests playlist. And I've attached all those playlists at the top of this video. So here's the first sheet. Here's the second sheet. Okay, nice clean hole there in the second sheet. Here's the third sheet. Okay, nice clean hole there. Look at that exit hole on the third sheet. And just so you guys don't think faking the results, here's the thickness of the plywood. Okay, it's just a 3-ply 1/2-inch sheet of plywood here. Okay. Here is sheet number 4. Massive hole. Okay, look at that. All right. Here is sheet number 5. And look at the size of this hole in sheet number 5. Here's my thumb. And I have big hands, guys. Okay, look at the size of that hole compared to my thumb. Just absolutely massive. Probably about 1.5 inches in diameter. Huge hole. Okay, look at that. Massive, massive hole. Okay, you definitely don't want to get hit by that. And here's the 6th sheet. And you can see the shot cup here is like kind of welded to the slug. And the slug is just all mangled up. And the 6th sheet stopped the slug. Look at this big bulge in the back of the 6th sheet. You can see a little bit of the slug poking through, okay, just a little bit, but for the most part, the 6th sheet stopped the slug entirely. So that's why I say it only penetrated through 5 sheets, because it got stopped by the 6th sheet, as you can see. So I'm going to pull this slug out of the plywood now, and we're going to check the weight retention, and I'm going to do a measurement to see what kind of expansion occurred. But look at this huge bulge. I mean, this bulge is insane. This is probably about 2 inches across. Absolutely massive, okay? Look at the size of that bulge compared to my hand, okay? I have big hands. It's probably about 2 inches across. All right, check that out. So I'll just give you guys a closer look so you can see what this slug looks like in the wood, okay, after penetrating through 5 sheets of plywood. It looks like it completely flattened out, to be honest with you, but we'll take a closer look. And here's the 7th sheet. You can see it left this huge dent in the 7th sheet here. Massive dent here, guys. This is probably about this is actually 2 inches across. Massive dent, guys, okay? A lot of kinetic energy. Look at the bulge on the back here in the 7th sheet. and even a little bit of a bulge in the 1/8 sheet, okay? Little bit of a bulge you can see right there. So I'm going to take this slug out of the plywood. We're going to take a closer look at it. I'm going to measure the expansion, and we're going to see how much weight it retained. So stay tuned. All right, guys, so I managed to pull the slug out of the 6th sheet of plywood. And again, this Millie Custom Defense Ammunitions 1 ounce, 2 3/4 inch rifled slug traveling at 1,550 feet per second, generating 2,330 foot-pounds of muzzle energy, penetrated through 5 sheets of 1/2 inch 3-ply southern yellow pine plywood, and basically the same amount of penetration as the 44 Magnum with 240 grain soft point factory ammunition. So pretty poor penetration with the 12 gauge slug, as I mentioned earlier. So I was trying to pull the slug out of the plywood, and it broke apart into pieces because the lead is just so soft. And as soon as I took my pry bar and tried to pry it out of the plywood, it just broke apart into these chunks. But it was basically like a giant flat piece. Okay, I'll try to piece it together for you guys. It kind of looked like that. You know, it looked like a silver dollar. It was just a flat piece of lead that was completely flattened out. So that's basically kind of what it looked like. All right. So it still had pretty good weight retention, though. It retained about 95% of its weight. And I would say the expansion, probably about 1.5 inches of expansion. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to just turn my reloading scale on and weigh the slug here for you. So I'm just going to zero out my scale. And I got this 100-gram weight that I'm going to use to zero it out. And it says pass, so that means it's zeroed out. You can see here it says 100 grams. We're going to switch it to grains now, and we're going to put our pieces on. Here's that shot cup. Okay, you can see it's quite thick. All right. And this is a rifled slug. So here's one little piece here. There's another piece there. There's another little piece there. So 415 grains, and that comes out to 95% weight retention. Okay, just gonna make sure this is all centered in the scale. So 415 grains, only lost 22 grains. That's really good. So there are a lot of good things about slugs. I am not a hater of slugs. I love slugs. The 12 gauge shotgun is one of the first firearms that I learned how to shoot. And I remember when I was 18 years old, I purchased a Mossberg 500, and that was the first firearm that I ever purchased by myself with my own money. My father did give me firearms when I was a teenager, but I wasn't old enough to purchase those firearms on my own. So I cut my teeth on 12 gauge shotguns in my youth. I hunted extensively for deer with rifled slugs. I've hunted a lot of small game and birds with my Mossberg 500. So I'm not a hater of shotguns. I think shotguns have their place. They're a very devastating weapon. But I don't recommend them for bear defense or any situation where you need a lot of penetration. Okay, big game hunting, bear defense, shooting through barriers, shooting through cover. I do not recommend a slug because the penetration is just not good enough. But if we're talking about home defense, excellent choice because you don't have to worry about over penetration. As you saw in this test, it only penetrated through 5 sheets of regular 1/2-inch 3-ply Southern Yellow Pine plywood. So I hope you guys enjoyed this test. Let me know if you have any suggestions for other tests. And check out my other plywood penetration tests. I've done a lot of them. Also check out my drywall penetration tests. And for all of my ballistics tests and penetration tests, they're all in my ballistics and penetration tests playlist. So I got a lot more videos coming. Stay tuned to my channel for more ballistics tests and 12-gauge shotgun testing. And as always, take care, God bless, and don't forget the 3 Ps: prepare, practice, and persevere.